Well, good morning. Here we are. So, Victoria and I have been talking to a lot of teachers and people who are having their first experiences with teaching this year, whether that's like student teachers or teachers in the classroom or teachers who have been teaching a long time. And one of the common things that we have discovered is that it's like, I need things to do right now, I need things to do tomorrow. And so, this, whatever this is, was born. And so, here we are talking about literally things that you can put into your classroom tomorrow or today if you're listening to this on your way to work. So today is the first sort of episode, if you will, of what we hope will be quite a few. And today, I think this is going to be super actionable. I think it's going to be good. Yeah.
I think so too.
Yeah.
You're doing a great job so far, Anne. So why don't you share your song first? We have an
Oh, that's
action
cute.
song. Yeah.
Well, okay, so the idea for this was, let me take one of these out because they're noise canceling and it's hard for me to hear myself think. Okay, so the idea was, what do you do when you get to the end of your class and it's like, I have a couple minutes left? What am I going to do with all of that time? And I know I'm just supposed to share one activity, but I have a couple ideas, and please don't get mad at me for not following instructions. So the first thing is, we talked about how there's actually like this weird delineation between I have extra time and I've looked up at the clock and my kids aren't at the door yet. And that's a very different thing than like I've lined everybody up and either the teacher is late picking them up because they had to use the restroom or whatever, or I line them up and I just have a couple minutes because sometimes we're just in that flow and whatever happens, happens kind of thing, right? So the first thing I would say is for any extra time that you have before they're actually lined up, the most simple way to get your kids still engaged in what you've been doing with your lesson is just to kind of continue the lesson, right? Like if you've already done every round of whatever game you're ending your lesson with, do another round of that game. Do another couple bonus rounds. And if somebody gets an extra turn up, it's just because we had extra time today, right? Another thing you can do is take a peek at whatever your learning target is for the day. And if it's something like today in music, we will sing and read patterns with ticka ticka, have them turn to a neighbor and clap a ticka ticka pattern that they made up that's 4 beats long or something like that. But one of the things that I really like, whether it's extra time in your class or even if kids are lined up at the door, is to take a book and sing them a story. So this is something that I really, really like to do with my younger students. And we've talked about this when we talked about kindergarten once upon a dream ago. And I think it's a really nice way to end class no matter what, because then you're bringing kids like down to this calm level before they go out into the hallway. It's something that you can do while they're standing in a line. Like you could just grab a book and kind of walk up and down and sing softly and you have their attention. There's lots of great books that you can sing, like the Isa Trapani books always come to mind. There's lots of other great ones that you can find at used bookstores or Amazon or whatever it might be. But let's talk about actual activities. So my go-to is Acka Backa, which you can find anywhere. And it's notated on the Holy Names collection. It's, if you do a quick Google search, there's lots of, iterations of that exists. And what I like about it is it's something that can go really, really quickly. And it's something that gives the students a lot of excitement because it's an elimination game, at least the way that I play it. And so the song just goes, Acka Backa Soda Cracker, Acka Backa Boo, Acka Backa Soda Cracker. And I sing it, out goes you. But many times it's notated, out goes you. So it stays so la so me. It's up to you how you want to do that or how you learned it or whatever. But what's nice is you just go along in a steady beat. You can have all the kids keep a steady beat wherever they want to keep it on their bodies. You can use that as, student suggestions, creativity, if you want to call it that, where they're making the choice where they keep the beat. Like, okay, Victoria, where are we keeping the beat this time? On our shoulders. Where are we keeping it this time? On our knees. And then you just keep changing things. And then it's an elimination game. And if they're lined up, they can just sit down. If they're in their classroom like setting still before they've lined up, you could have them go grab a pair of rhythm sticks or go sit at a drum or something and keep the steady beat. So it's something that can just be whatever you want it to be. And it can last, 1 round, 2 rounds, however many, right? Maybe you don't get to a winner because the teacher shows up at the door. Maybe you played 2 full rounds with the whole class because the teacher is like 10 minutes late that day. I don't know. So that's one that I always just have in my back pocket.
Yeah, I like that, or like counting out games in general, because if they're still at their spots and you haven't lined up yet, but you have a couple extra minutes that you need to fill, then Acka Backa is your transition to line up, right? So when you're out, you go line up, or you and the two people next to you go line up, or you go line up and you choose one person to line up with you, right? So that way you're not going through Acka Backa 24 times, but you can still use it as the actual transition to line up. And then I like what you said about pulling it out time-wise by having kids go to instruments or coming in the middle of the circle or suggesting other ways to keep the steady beat. Or you can do like a super rushed version of Acka Backa where you just go 2 times in a row and then you're done, right? But either way,
Yeah, you could even, instead of going out goes you could say out goes blue, out goes red. Like whoever's wearing that color, okay, they're down there. I mean, you can change it 8 million trillion thousand ways, right?
yes. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so mine is similar in the idea that you can like stretch it out or you can squish it together. Mine is William, he had 7 sons, and my source for this is 120 singing games and dances. And for anyone following along in your manuals at home, it's on page 32, I believe. And what was the first person doing? Were they jumping? I mean, were they jumping up and down? Or were they nodding their head? Or were they shaking their shoulders? Or were they eating soup? What were they doing?
They're tapping their nose.
You're correct. William, he had 7 sons. William, he had 7 sons, and this is what they did. Number 1 was tapping their nose, tapping their nose, tapping their nose. Number 1 was tapping their nose, and this is what they did. Hold up, 7 fingers. William, he had 7 sons. Ooh, 7 sons. William, he had 7 sons, and this is what they did. Number 1 was tapping their nose. Number 2 was... And what was number 2 doing? Scratching their head, scratching their head, scratching their head. Number 2 was scratching their head, and this is what they did. Back to 7. William, he had 7 sons. William, we're not done, Anne. William, he had 7 sons, and this is what they did. Number 1 was tapping their nose. Number 2 was scratching their head. Number 3 was... Were they punching? What were they doing?
Doing stretches. I'm trying to do things that are upper body.
Stretching. It was punching their neighbor. No. School appropriate. Try again. Give me an appropriate answer. Stretching. Number 3 was stretching, and this is what they did. Okay, so you get the idea. It's a cumulative song, and we're going to go all the way through 7. One of the reasons that I love this song is at some point, someone was tiptoeing to line up, or if we're already in line, when we are standing up, we are sitting down, we are jumping, we are twisting, we are shaking. And then the other day, I was teaching a kindergarten class, and we were all on the rug, and it was like a calming, quiet activity. And so I pulled this song out and just kind of sang it in a quiet voice, and everything was kind of like what you were showing me, Anne, with your stretches, stuff like that. And then someone said jumping up and down. And the way you do that is you turn your fingers into little people and you are jumping up and down like this, or you are running like this. So you can still do, whatever like big motion kids want to do. If you're trying to use it as a calming activity, there's always a way to kind of bring that activity into kind of a smaller space and keep it at that, like that calm noise level like that. My sister did this when she was teaching elementary school, and she said that the kids were always sleeping. Everyone was always sleeping, like laying on the floor sleeping. And that was like their go-to. Okay, so that's William. He had 7 sons. I love this song. One of the reasons that I love it is because we spend so much time in So Me La land. And then all of a sudden we get this new tonality, and it's interesting for the kids and it's interesting for us. And so that can kind of be like, this song is like a breath of fresh air for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I love how it's one of those things that, like you said, it can be as big as it can be small, depending on where you are. And I think that's what's cool, and not just with these two songs that we talked about, but anything that you've done kind of in a big way, like in like a gross locomotor way, like to put it really literally, can usually be brought back down to like a seated, calm kind of like fine motor exploration type of thing to tailor what you need at whatever point in your lesson and whatever the kids need, right? Like maybe you have uh I'm looking at a different song title and it's not what you did. Maybe you're doing William, he had seven sons, and instead you're doing something, you had something planned with like instruments,
Yeah.
right? Or like sticks or something. And like, that like that class just can't handle that today. And so you
Yep.
can bring it back down to like this level instead. Like they walk in, they're crazy. You're like, nope, we're going to do it this way. So I really like how it can have that sort of differentiation depending on what your kids need in that moment, right?
Yeah.
It's super cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about two songs. We have Acka Backa, and with Acka Backa, we could substitute any counting out rhyme, right? And you've talked
Yep.
about how, again, we can expand it or we can pull it down. And then we talked about William, he had seven sons, but really we're talking about any big action song. And again, the same idea. You can bring the energy level up. You can also bring the energy level down. One thing, just really quickly before we leave, the other thing that I forgot to say with this one that I like to do is if you are doing this with like second grade instead of kindergarten, one of the fun things to do is to kind of vary the cognitive load that you are asking kids to do. So instead of singing William, he had seven sons, it's William, he had, and this is what they did. And you clap on all the numbers. Number was right. And then you can also, and then you can also inner hear what the people were doing. So clap the numbers, inner hear what they're doing. So if number 3 was reading a book, you would have number was, and this is what they did. So there's some ways that you can kind of level up what we're doing cognitively depending on the age of the group.
Yeah, love that.
Okay.
And then I don't have a fun trick like that for Acka Backa, but I know that even fifth graders don't want to get out, so I'm still
Yes.
standing by that choice.
Yeah, and I think that's what's great about, I'm glad that you brought
The
counting out
counting out, yeah.
things because that works no matter what the age group is. That's super smart. Okay, you feel
Yeah,
good?
100%. Yeah, this is fun.
Okay,
Party
that's
on.
it.
The end.